to my podcast about sports, about sports, about sports.
Howdy, Ags. From the tailgate, it's AP, the coach, home of Aggie football. Today's episode brought to you by Matthews Electric, full-service electrical contractor in the Brazos Valley. No job too big, no job too small. Call Blaine at 979-220-6403. Light up your home. Light up your life. Blaine's a really good dude, so go get him on the phone, get him some work. A couple of notes from the YouTube page. Tyler Eubanks, 100% agree with the take on complexity of the defense. On the other hand, Trev Strass says he isn't worried about Elko's complex defense, seen it, and it was a reason for wins under Jimbo. All right, two different takes. It is what it is. Some people agree, some people don't. Welcome to the show, LaHarris47 and Trav Strass. Jay Paul says, good show. I hate the zone blocking from last few years. Yep. I think all the blocking for the last few years was pretty bad, but I fully agree that part of the problem is technique on that zone blocking. Folks, don't forget to email us at agstailgate@gmail.com. Get on the YouTube, subscribe. Also, if you work with C-Money, Corey, tell him he's missed on the podcast, man. I need my Robin to my Batman or my Batman to my Robin. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, get with the program, bro. Let me just start off by talking a little bit about what goes into this thing, right? We're going to get into some Aggie football. We got practice starting today. We talk about practice. Starts today, Aggie football practice, first day, fall camp, today. Yesterday, Mike Elko and a couple of the guys got up on stage and told us some things. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, let me talk a little bit about what, some of what it takes to be, to prepare for this thing. Number one thing is that I'm a huge Aggie football fan, Aggie athletics fan in general. So as Aggies know, that can be a roller coaster of emotion. I have to go through that emotion. And I watch the games not once, but multiple times, oftentimes, especially football, right? And so nothing, absolutely nothing tells you what the people involved, the coaches and the players are doing in workouts more than what they put on tape during the games. Ultimately, that is what tells you whether what they're doing on a daily basis is good or not. So watch the tape. That's going to tell you a lot about what's going on. The other thing is, I listen to players, friends of players. I listen to family, listen to other podcasts and media, coaches, all those things, So I listen to what people have to say. And when you're talking about some of the media and everything else and all these different people, you've got to sort of understand that and know sort of who you're talking to, right? What they're saying and interpret the things that they say. So don't just take the words, right? You've got to take also how they say things, what they're talking about and different things. And depending on who it is and what the situation is, understand that it's not always true. It's not always fully true. It's not always false either. So, but sometimes you get both from the same person as far as things that are true and not. And you sort of have to be able to distinguish those things. And so the idea is that depending what your source is, you got to understand and interpret what they're saying, right? And some of that is a big part of the process too. So one of the media groups that I listen to and get updates from is Texags, right? We all, if you're an Aggie, you've heard of Texags, you know that those guys over there do, have a lot of information and a lot of direct connection into the program. Today, though, these days, it seems more like the Longhorn Network, to be honest with you. I mean, they can't go through a show without bringing up what's happening in Austin and then, going through that process. Look, I'm a former coach, right? I don't care about them right now. This has to be about the Aggies. Everything that's happening today and what's going on with this program has to be about the Aggies and the work we're putting in every day. Next, it's about Notre Dame. And that's what this is. That's how this program is built, right? We are talking about the Aggies. We're going to be talking about what they're doing today. Get ready for the next game. All right. Just want to also say nobody's more annoying than Nuno, by the way. This guy, that dude is super annoying. He can't have his own like real take. Everything has got to be sort of qualified and all this stuff. Yeah, I think he's just scared to be wrong. Anyway, another group that I listen to is the SEC podcast. And I don't listen to them for Aggie news, right? We are more familiar with the Aggies than they are. However, it's a good one-stop shop for all SEC coverage. So if you're looking for other things to talk about, to listen to for SEC coverage, they're a good one. You got to be careful because they're sort of SEC homers, and they oversell every SEC program except for maybe Vandy. So, and every time you listen to them, they may be talking as an Oklahoma fan, they may be talking as a Missouri fan, and they'll overhype these programs at times. So be careful, understand that. So understand who you're listening to. A few takes I keep hearing that I just think are garbage, right? So some of the takes, with regards to what this Aggie program has been over the last couple of years and the failure, the lack of success, let's call it, that the Aggies have had over the last 4 years. And it's this idea that the reason for this over the Jimbo tenure was like constant quarterback injuries ever since Mon, right? And so we're really talking about what, the last 3 years. And let me tell you why I think this is such a garbage argument, right? Okay, and take Connor out of it last year, because I think Connor is a difference maker. I think Connor last year was a difference maker, even though it was basically his first year as a starter. But prior to Connor's last year, Connor, not even the year before, right? Just last year, Connor, nobody was really a difference maker on this roster. Haynes King was bad. Max Johnson, bad. Calzada, bad. So every time they got hurt, it didn't hurt us as far as win-loss is concerned, because we were replacing one bad quarterback with another bad quarterback with another bad quarterback. And at the end of the day, the problem wasn't the quarterbacks, it was the coach, right? This is about coaching and scheme. Coaching and scheme. None of those injuries were the reason we were as bad as we were. It was the scheme that is the reason we were as bad as we were. It was the coaching was the reason we were as bad as we were. And so, to blame it on injuries is real easy, right? They talk about last year. Part of it is the fact that the prior coaching staff didn't recruit well enough. Hey, top 10 recruiting classes every year. So don't tell me it's about the talent, right? It's about the talent. And here's the difference, right? They're plugging talent into whatever scheme they ran. You listen to Elko, and we're going to talk about this, and that's the difference. Whoever's on the field is who you got. You got to set up your scheme in accordance to that and make sure that you're playing your best football. Here's the other thing. This idea that an expectation for Aggie with this schedule that they have this year, 8-4 is an acceptable season for Aggie fans. Acceptable. That's this idea that 8-4 is acceptable. Look, I'm a huge Aggie fan, and I understand it's first year of the program under Elko. And I understand that there's all kinds of changes going on, right? However, 8-4 is not acceptable. 8-4 is not acceptable. Why is that not acceptable for Aggie fans? Because there is no other program in the country that has everything that this A&M program has given to its coaches, right? Whether it's money, facilities, and more importantly, the fan base, that's incredible. Those things are the things that are going to drive winning, and a talent base, right? Great recruiting grounds here in Texas and in the South and Louisiana and where they go. The ability to reach anybody in the country. So, people are going to make excuses. Well, it's Elko's first year. Well, if he's a guy, there should be an improvement, right? Because Jimbo's regime was all dysfunction. There's plenty of talent out there on this field, in this roster, right? And whether it's from the transfer portal or it's from the recruiting classes, there is nowhere on this roster that I think that there's a deficiency in talent. Now, can the coaches put the scheme around and make them successful? put them in a position to be successful. Blue chip ratio on this roster is in the top 10 in the country. It's ridiculous. And then the other argument that you see sometimes is that, well, you know, they've got to go play teams like Auburn, Arkansas, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Florida, LSU, Missouri. You know, like Missouri is the darling, right? Like everybody expects them to go win it all, right? And they, you know, they or compete for a championship or into the playoffs. You know, Missouri in the last 3 years has lost to Boston College, Army, K-State, and Wake. Don't give me this idea that they've been this dominant program. All right, they lost 5 guys on defense to the NFL. How, you know, there should be you should have a respect for your opponents, but don't tell me that they're the most, you know, that they're coming in and they're more talented than you are and that they should beat you, right? With regards to LSU, they lost to UCLA, Kansas State, Florida State, and Utah in the last 3 years. LSU lost 3 first-round offensive players, including the Heisman winner. Their defense was one of the worst in the country last year. You know, they come to your place. That shouldn't be a loss. That shouldn't be a loss. You know, they talk about Auburn, and everybody's giving Auburn all this props about how good they're going to be. In the last 3 years, that team has lost to Penn State twice, the University of Houston, Maryland, and last year, by the way, New Mexico, late in the year. And so this idea that this is a team that's so good and all this stuff and the great coaching and whatever, don't give me that. The expectation is you should beat them. You should beat them. Arkansas in the last couple of years has lost to Liberty and BYU. Their coach is on the hot seat. He's about to get fired. You know, Florida, same thing, right? The expectations here are that those should be wins. I understand. Look, Notre Dame's ranked in the top 10. Florida, Texas is ranked in the top 5. You know, if you want to say, okay, well, maybe expectations at 10-2 are legitimate, maybe. But here's the thing: this team, in order to be acceptable, has to have 9 wins. 8 wins is not enough. 9 wins for an acceptable season, not a good season. 10 wins is a good season. Are those expectations too high? Yeah, well, some people will argue that they are because this is a program that has had 2 double-digit win seasons since 1995. 2. Are they too high? Well, hell no, they're not. Hell no, they're not. R.C. Slocum here was no nonsense, man. No nonsense, no frills. It wasn't about the hype. It was about the performance. He had 4 consecutive 10-win seasons from 91 to 94. 4 consecutive. This program has the best fans in the country, the best environment in the country at Kyle Field. It's got a fertile recruiting ground that you know, they need to continue to take advantage of. And on top of that, they got all the resources in the world, right? All the resources in the world. And so don't tell me that those expectations are too high. Don't tell me those expectations are too high. Is Elko the guy to get us there? That's the question. We know Jimbo wasn't. But look, it's been about coaching. It's been about coaching ever since we're talking about R.C. Slocum had that run, right? Who were the coaches? Fran, ruined quarterbacks. Reggie, McGee, I mean, ruined quarterbacks. That guy, his own staff hated him. That was a horrible hire. Sherman, he couldn't adjust in game. He did a lot of things right, but he couldn't adjust in game, unfortunately, and lost games that they had big leads in. That was his biggest problem. Sumlin, all hype, no development, man. All hype, no development. Boy, they'd come out of the gates scorching hot because they were talented, and as teams saw them play and watched and found out what their weaknesses are, done. End of the season, nothing. Jimbo, he refused to adjust his scheme to the players, and all the focus was on the quarterback, right? He's a quarterback coach. We didn't have a head coach. He was a quarterback coach. So the problem's been coaching and coaching alone. At some point, we've got to pick the right guy. Is Elko him? I hope so. I'm on the bandwagon right now. And you know why? Because fall camp is here, and we just listened to him talk. And you know what? I liked some of the things he's saying. And let's talk about that interview yesterday with Mike Elko. We also talked to Bryce Anderson. We also talked to Connor and Noah Thomas. So all those guys came on, did a little press conference. What did we hear? What did we hear during this press conference? A couple of things that were absolutely, sort of important from coming from this group, right? Elko is the main guy. But one of the things we heard, no one missed a workout all summer. Boy, that's new in this program. That's new in this program. No one missed a workout all summer. This is the biggest piece of news I think we got yesterday. And, as you go look at it in the sense of, what this team really needs to do, clearly a unity and a bond between the players and a desire to just go work is important to produce, not hype. And the fact that they showed up every day, that tells you something. That is a change from the prior regime to the new regime, and it's an important one. Okay. What else? What else did we learn? Colin Klein will bring excitement to this offense that the Aggies have been looking for. That's a direct quote. That is a direct quote. Connor Wigman was asked, what does he like about Colin Klein? He said, points, points, points. We're going to score some points. That is huge. That is impressive. He's already got these guys buying in. He's got everybody on the hook here, right? There's things that are happening that clearly show that this thing's going to be more explosive. And we've talked about it, right? This offense has been a 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense for the last 6 years. It's been a short passing game kind of offense for the last 6 years. And it doesn't make any sense for you to be a running team with a short passing game. Running team, where's the play action? Where's the stuff over the top, the stuff that stretches defenses? That hadn't been there. Big plays were non-existent for the last 6 years. It is exciting to hear that this is going to be different, right? That there is going to be an explosive offense, an offense that creates big plays with different things and whatever it takes, gimmicks if necessary, right? That's a huge, huge thing. I fully expect that to be one of the biggest changes for this team from last year to this year. Big plays, offensive. Another thing we heard, a couple of guys that are out. So Nye White is out right now, but they're hoping to have him back for the start of the season. Barber, transfer wide receiver, still out, but working to get back. Green is still working his way into full health. He's participating in practice, but still working his way back. So a couple of injury notes there, and things to expect for us as we're looking out there and seeing what's going on. Offensive line wise, Besantes is playing guard, 100% playing guard. He's gotten very strong. Along with that, offensive line wise, 3 guys competing at center are transfer from Utah, Naboo, who we knew, and Dewberry. That's a very interesting deal because, we've been talking about where does Dewberry fit in this situation, right? Especially in a situation if you've got Reed Adams and Besantes at the guards. Well, apparently Reed Adams is also getting some reps over at tackle. So maybe Dewberry has got a spot there at guard. Maybe he's going to take the spot at center, right? He's played center before. I'm a big fan of Dewberry. I think he's been one of our best offensive linemen over the last couple of years when he's on the field. And so I believe that he should be getting reps. Now, at the end of the day, the guy that practices the best, that's going to be your guy, right? And so who is that mix? I think we're pretty sure that we've got Zune in the mix, right? And Besantes in the mix. He talked about where does Fatherly fit in, right? Him and Crownover competing there at the right tackle spot. Where does Reed Adams fit in, right? Is he playing guard? Is he playing tackle? Where do those guys get in? So Naboo, obviously, we've mentioned, and that's another guy that can play multiple positions. So is he going to compete at different places? I think that ultimately, you're probably looking at a group that includes Besantes, Zune, Reed Adams, and I don't know, is Fathery and Dewberry? Is it Naboo and Fathery? One of those guys. But another interesting thing that Elko talked about was, you know what? Another positive to having this problem, this issue with all these bodies here. Now we've got some depth on the offensive line, with some depth. We haven't even talked about some of the younger guys and guys that hadn't had so much playing time. Is that we can run different combinations out there in the game to go 5 or 7 different guys throughout a game, right? Play more guys and allow guys to be fresher, especially later in the games. So that's also an option. You don't normally see rotating offensive line. Part of the reason for that is that not very many teams have 7 guys that are just as good as, all just as good, right? But I could see that for this team. I could see that you don't get much of a drop off with Crownover instead of Fathery, that you don't get much of a drop off with Dewberry as opposed to Basantis or Reed Adams, right? Or Naboo or whatever the situation is. And so you've got guys, you've got bodies, use them, understand whose weaknesses are what, understand whose strengths are what, and then you can adjust your play calling based off of that, right? You can do all of those things, but overall, there's an excitement over this offensive line. He was asked if the offensive line can be a strength for this team. He said, well, based on past performance, it's not a strength. Based on what we've seen so far, it's not a strength. We'd like it to become, a strength, but we're not there yet. We've still got a lot of work to do. And that's just true. This ain't one of Jimbo's responses about the fact that, oh, everybody's playing great. These guys are practicing excellent. They're executing, whatever, right? We're not just blowing smoke out there. He thinks they're better. He thinks that they're a lot better already now than they were even in the spring. But it ain't the strength of the offense yet. In time, they could get there. They could get there. I'm excited to see this offensive line under new leadership, right? I'm excited to see this offensive line under new leadership with a new coach. Really look at the technique and what they're doing technique-wise as far as the development of these players and making sure that, they're getting better with their feet, with their hands, with their eyes, right? And, people always want to talk about, the scheme and everything else. Yeah, the scheme is a big part of things, of course, sure. And we got to adjust the scheme to our talent. But at the end of the day, as an offensive lineman, it's about what are you doing with your feet? What are you doing with your eyes? What are you doing with your hands? Because ultimately, you have to stay on blocks. Ultimately, you have to be able to take care of your responsibility. No matter what responsibility that is, what the scheme says it is, you have to be able to one-on-one block. And part of the problem last year was they were never finding their guy. They weren't even finding him, right? And they couldn't stay on those blocks. Why? Because their technique was horrible. I think that's going to be the big thing under new leadership. This offensive line's got a chance. It's got a chance to be significantly better. And they've got players, right? High quality players that want to win, that want to play well. And I'm excited to see them do that under better leadership. So offensive line, part of the commentary there. The other part is other side of the ball, very strong defensive line. He was explicit about the fact that this is one of the best offensive lines in the country, right? And because of that, he's so impressed with the talent that they have there that he believes that this defensive line is going to carry the burden to make sure that this defense is successful. And what does that mean? What does that mean? It means that if this defensive line with guys like Shamar Turner, Nick Gordon, DJ Hicks, Shamar Stewart, right? Guys like Malik Silla, Rodus Johnson, all those guys that come into play here, right? Just so many talented players. We haven't mentioned Cassius Howe yet. And let me tell you something. I haven't talked about this guy enough. But everybody that is talking A&M football right now is starting to mention him quite a bit. You're hearing it from the coaches. You're hearing it from the other players up front, in that you're talking to. And that tells me something. That dude's going to be a part of this defense. He's going to be a very productive part of this defense, right? Those guys now have depth up front. We haven't mentioned Grunlow Dindy. We haven't mentioned Regis yet. He's going to be in the rotation up front in the middle, right? Rodas Johnson. Those guys with DJ Hicks and Shamar Turner. We haven't mentioned Samu, the big Hawaiian out there yet, right? Those are guys that are going to be up in there. How about Rylan Kennedy on the outside? All these guys that, keep on, you can keep on naming some of these guys. Yeah, did we lose some guys? Yeah, we lost. Look, McKinley Jackson's a huge loss. Everybody wants to talk about, well, Nolan wasn't that big of a loss. Yeah, he was. Listen, we can say whatever he wants to. He might have taken plays off. He might have done whatever. When he was playing, that dude was a talent. And is he a loss? Yeah, he is. But I'm not going to focus in on the guys that left, right? Fidel Diggs, big loss. He's going to have a big, big, big senior season. I believe that, right? He's going to have a big senior season. I believe that. But you know what? I'd rather have Nick Scorton. I'd rather have Nick Scorton and Howe, right? And those guys are going to make a difference for us. And that's the point. So as we look at things with regards to, and we haven't even talked about the young guys, right? So, you're going to get a better performance out of Melissa in his third year. How are you going to use all the bodies, right? How are we going to rotate? We're going to keep folks fresh. But that defensive line is going to carry the burden for this defense. And what does that mean? Well, he explained that to us. It means that your defensive line is so good that you can do more short boxes, right? Stop the run without overloading the box with numbers. Can you do that? You better be careful. Week 1 against Notre Dame. I don't know. You may have to adjust. You better be ready to put more guys in the box against a tough running game like that. When you face a team, I don't know, like who's gonna run the ball? Auburn? I don't know. They're probably gonna try to throw the ball more, but Notre Dame is definitely one of them. Nowadays there's so many of these guys there's so many of these teams that they want to just sling it around everywhere. Are we facing a great running team? Maybe Arkansas. Maybe Arkansas is it. Maybe it's South Carolina with their new mobile quarterback and a guy that can make plays on the ground. So, but teams like that, you may be ready to adjust if you need to add more folks into the box if necessary. But otherwise, maybe this defensive line can carry that burden of stopping the run where you can play more coverage. You can let your linebackers roam a little freer, right? And then adjust based off of, and this is what I love. This is what I love about what Elko talks about. Adjust the scheme to the players. Adjust the scheme to the players. And adjust it maybe week to week based on your opponent, right? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How do we make up for both, right? And that is coaching. That is coaching. And it's not Jimbo saying, we got to execute better. That's not coaching. What's coaching is adjusting what you're doing in order to make sure that you're successful on the field. Love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. We talked wide receivers. He talked about that going into the summer. He was a little bit worried. He still wasn't feeling real sure about where the things are. He's feeling a lot better today because of the work that this wide receiver group has put in the summertime. Specifically, guys like Noah, who was there, who was selected as one of the guys that talked to the media. A guy like Moose, mentioned specifically. Cyrus Allen, Bostic, one of the look, this is a big one. Ashton Bethel Roman, who he mentioned specifically, right? A guy that's new to the program. Isaiah Williams, who's also a guy that's new to the program. These are guys that we don't know about yet. We don't know what they're going to give us, but they're showing some things. Now, they've been showing some things in off-season workout. What are they going to look like today and next week as they start to put the pads on and actually get contact and then feel what it is to play college football? They flash so far. How are those young guys going to adjust to actually getting hit, to being physical, to dealing with, press coverage? That's going to be the thing. Thomas apparently has, looks great, right? You can tell he's put on some strength, some muscle. The offseason has been good to him. He's got huge upside to be big time receiver. Has he done enough to be physical out there and play physical? Get off the line of scrimmage, make plays, right? That's what receivers do, man. We remember Damon Demas. The guy was the best athlete on the planet, but he couldn't get off the line sometimes. So can they be physical enough to do those things? Well, we're about to find out. We're about to find out, but I'm excited about this group. I've talked about it, right? I don't think that that we've got a hole at wide receiver. I think we just got some guys that need to get some opportunities, right? And be put in situations to be successful. I'm excited about this group. I'm excited about Moose. I'm excited about Noah, Allen, all those guys. Bostic's a guy coming in as a transfer. So, we haven't mentioned Walker either. And to supplement that, the tight ends, right? We do need the tight ends to come on. And that is a group that, whether it's Watson or Green's got to get fully healthy, I've talked about Platt. I think Theo's had a great offseason, right? That's a group that's got to contribute to this receiving group, right? And be multiple, allow us to run the football, do different things in formations and different things like that. That was the greatest thing as a play caller for when I was a play caller, was having a tight end that I could use inline, offline, and not have to make personnel changes. I want to go from, tight end 2 backs, I formation to 4 wide, same personnel. The defense can't change personnel, right? Flex him, put the, if one of the backs is good enough to be out in space, how about a guy like Daniels, right? Or Owens, right? You can sit out there in space. Owens, man, that guy could be a playmaker out there. And you've got the same personnel, but all of a sudden you've gone from an in tight formation, running formation, to an out wide spread formation, right? And a defense has to adjust with their same personnel. Can a linebacker cover that guy? Because you're going to have to split that linebacker out there. That's what I loved. I loved that as a playmaker and taking advantage of those situations. And then using tempo in that situation in order to keep the defense off balance. And that's huge. Right? Now all of a sudden you had a big play, and you're going to just go run right up to the line of scrimmage. You're not going to let the defense adjust to that. You're going to force them to go. And that's another thing that he talked about. This is part of what Elko discussed. Hey, what are you guys going to do as far as tempo offensively? And, once again, it's not about, hey, this is the system. That's going to be dictated on a game-to-game basis. Situations, drive-to-drive basis, right? What are we doing? There's no standard answer here. It changes based on a matchup. Against this team, if we think we need to slow it down, we're better off that way, then we'll slow it down. Against this other team, if we think we're better, speeding things up and going, let's do that. Now we have to take into account how does that affect our defense? What's going on there? But if we're a better matchup in a shootout this week, let's go do it, right? And from situation to situation, okay, now you've got to be able to do both. But can you do both well? That's the big question. Can you do both well? And they should be able to do both well. Slow it down and speed it up. Especially if those changes are happening on a week-to-week basis, that you're practicing it all the time. That's what this time is for, knowing how to adjust those speeds and getting to the line and doing the things. But that means you have to be not simple, but you have to be simple enough that your guys can get it, grasp it, and play fast. And that's the thing. If you can do a lot of different things based off of formations, based off of the speed of the offense, based off of all those things that you've determined because of a matchup. But in reality, you're running the same plays, right? And it doesn't have to be all that complicated. But he wants to have the ability to do different things, and that's important. And we're not basing that on what we want to do. We're basing that on our opponent and the matchup. And every week we have to evaluate that, right? And that's huge. That's a coach thinking. adapt the scheme to our players and to our opponents. That's a coach that's thinking. Another thing that he brought up, DBs. He talked about the fact that there's so much more versatility and pieces in the secondary than they've ever had before. And so what does that mean? It means that, look, if we're facing this team and this team's got a bunch of big, tall wide receivers, well, we can adjust and put our big, tall corners, big physical, tall corners on those wide receivers. We got a team that we're playing against that's like quicker, smaller guys, and sort of a little bit shiftier. Well, we can bring in smaller guys that are a little bit shiftier, and so you don't have to have an offensive unit out there that says, or a defensive unit out there that puts the same 4 to 5 guys in the secondary on every play. No, 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 no. Let's match them up. Let's adjust this based off of what these other guys like to do. Who plays the deep ball best? Well, that's what this guy likes to run. What are the route combinations that he runs? Okay, well, he does a lot of screens. Well, that's who plays the best screen. So this guy's going to match up here. And he talks about the thinking man's game on this thing. It doesn't have to be, okay, this is my starting 5. It's more about, hey, look, we've got 10 DBs here. Which one does what best? And let's put him in that situation, right? And you've got a lot of options and depth and competition, different packages for different players, down to down basis, right? What do we expect these guys to do? What do you expect them to run? And what do we have to be able to defend? Who does that the best? It doesn't all on every down, it's not going to be the same guys, right? The answer is not the same. And there's packages with 6, 7 DBs at times. There's packages with 4. There's packages with 5, right? And so you're constantly doing different things, and you're doing it based off of your matchup. You're being smart, thinking man's game. I love that. And as you can see, there's a theme to what Elko was talking about. There's a theme about, hey, we're not just gonna do what we do. We're going to do and we're going to adjust to our players. We're going to do and adjust to our opponents. And those are the things that are important. That's not what's been going on around here for the last few years. That's huge piece of information. Now he's got to follow through with it, right? But he's telling us running back, you can expect it's going to be by committee. And especially because we've got guys out there that can play, right? I think Moss is going to be the guy as far as the running downs, the early downs. I think Owens is a great change of pace guy right now. He still had a great offseason, but he's still got to get more physical and figure and sort of learn the inside down, between the tackles, running game, and get comfortable there. Not running so upright sometimes, but the things that he can do in space are incredible. So you bring him in and you do different things with him. He talked about Daniels and the fact that he's looks so much different. He's so much thicker, especially in his lower body. The things that he can do right now. And he's an all-around guy, that's going to be able to get reps in there. EJ Smith is now healthy. We'll see where he goes. He's going to have a hard time finding reps in this backfield. I'm not sure he's better than any of those 3 other guys, right? I think he's going to struggle to find those reps. What else? I mean, we talked about Bryce Anderson. And he came in and he talked about playing safety, straight up playing safety, right? Instead of nickel. And the thing about it is he wants to be an eraser. And you know what's big about that? He's talking about his speed and his ability to get sideline to sideline. And to be able to the fact that he sees the play from back in the back a lot better and is able to diagnose and do things quicker and read those plays. And so I think that helps him, right? I do think that helps him. I will say this about Bryce Anderson, if he can be that eraser, right? Defenses, you go back in the history of football, defenses with great safety play are usually some of the best defenses. Talk about defenses with Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu. And, you can go back a lot further than that, obviously, right? So a lot of those guys, a lot of those defenses, you look at the Seattle defenses and the San Francisco defense from back in the day, in the 90s, and those guys, Ronnie Lott and all those guys in the 80s, even, right? So, those defenses with those big time players at safety oftentimes are great defenses. If Anderson can be that guy, that's going to be huge. He looked great, by the way. He looked great. Cassius Howe, once again, he's going to be a player. He's going to be on the field. He's going to make plays. I'm excited to see him, in that rotation. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about with regards to this press conference is they do have an idea. Unlike the spring where they were just splitting reps all the time, they've got an idea of some of the starters, right? So these guys are sort of, basically entrenched into their position. Something big would have to happen for them not to be the starter. So they're going to get the majority of the reps with the first team. And, he didn't name these guys, but, we can probably guess. We can probably guess offensively. There's not, and on either side of the ball, there's probably not a lot. But offensively, you got to think Connor has established himself as a starting quarterback here. And, he talked about that. He said, well, you know what? I like to compete. I'm coming out here to compete. I want to earn my spot every day. Yeah, maybe I am the starter. But at the end of the day, this is what I love. I love to come out here and work, compete. Connor, that's one. You got to think Noah Thomas, this guy that's pretty much entrenched as one of the wide receivers, right? Starting out there. Moose, I think he's entrenched as one of the guys starting out there. Those two guys are going to be two of your guys. Is Walker the third one? We don't know yet. I don't think I'm going to throw him into that mix. How about on the offensive line? Zune, DeSantis, I think are for sure starters. But everybody else, I don't know. Maybe Reed Adams. I don't know. I'm not going to entrench anybody else into those positions because one of the things that they made clear is that there's a lot of these guys playing for different positions, right? You would think Reed Adams is going to play somewhere else, somewhere on that line with all of the talk that we've had about him and how tough he is and the things that he's done and the leadership that he's brought. But we don't have him cemented into a spot yet. So, we got to keep him off that list. But offensively, those are the guys. I don't think, because of the different bodies that we have at tight end, all the different guys, I don't think you can say, okay, this guy's their starter, especially because Green is coming off of injury. How's he going to respond to the recovery process, right? And it's not just any injury, right? It's a big injury. So, how does he come back? And how long does it take him to fully gain confidence mentally, not physically, in what he's doing and be able to get to that point? So I wouldn't throw him into that group yet. Okay. That's all the guys, I think, offensively. Those five guys, Connor, Thomas, Moose, Zune, and DeSantis, I know that they're going to be starters. Okay. Defensively, how about Shamar Turner? How about Scorton? How about York? How about Anderson? I think those guys are for sure starters. Those guys are for sure starters. Do we know who's around them? Well, some people may say, how about Shamar Stewart? Well, could it be Cassius Howell on the end? How about DJ Hicks? Well, could it be Regis? Could it be Rodis Johnson starting next to Shamar inside? I mean, I think it could. So I don't think those are established yet. We certainly don't have any idea who the second linebacker is. None whatsoever. Who's going to surround Anderson in the secondary? We don't know who the other safety is yet. Could be a number of different folks, right? Including some of the transfers. At corner, I feel pretty good about Chappelle. Is it for sure? No, he's probably going to be playing a lot of nickel. And he could be your starter at nickel. I expect him to be the starter at nickel, but we don't know. We don't know if it's going to be Lee, Des Ricks, Javon Thomas. Who is going to be out of corner, right on the outside? So, those guys I don't think are set. Only four guys really that are just entrenched with that kind of thought process, right? So, that's one of those things. Let's move on to questions from the tailgate. And we'll close this thing out with questions from the tailgate. First one player on each side of the ball that is not being talked about enough. One player from each side of the ball that's not being talked about enough. I'm going to name more than one because that's what I do. I always name more than one. But if I had to name one, I think that would be Moss. I don't think Moss is being talked about. Everybody's talking about Owens, right? Everybody thinks Owens is about to take over this backfield. I think Moss is going to be the lead back here. And I believe that he is a power runner that has got, can carry an offense through a fourth quarter whenever you're trying to close out a game. And I think they're going to use him. I think they're going to use him. I think Moss is a guy that's not getting enough pub here. He's not being talked about it. That's the one thing I would say. I think he's going to have a dominant year. We're not talking about Allen at wide receiver enough. If I wanted to go to a second guy, we've been talking Walker sort of as that third wide receiver. I think more than three guys are going to get on the field at receiver. I don't think we've been talking about Allen enough. That's a guy that comes in with some experience, playing experience, and has made some plays, and he looked good in the spring, and I think he's going to pick up this offense. And, from all accounts, he's had a good offseason. And the last one is Dewberry. And I think I mentioned him earlier, and I'm big on Dewberry. I think Cam Dewberry is one of the guys that has been one of our best offensive linemen when he's on the field over the last 2 years. And in spite of the coaching regime that had all those issues, right? And I think he needs to be on the field, right? He needs to play, even if it's in a rotation, right? Because, if he's not the full-time guy this year, he will be next year. He will be next year. Cam Dewberry needs to be on the field. He needs to be getting reps. And honestly, they probably need to find a place to start him. But, at the very least, he needs to be getting reps. And we're not talking about him enough. It's been a lot of Naboo. It's been a lot of Reed Adams. It's been a lot of DeSantis on the interior, a lot of the talks with those guys. Dewberry played better than all of those guys in the last couple of years. How about defensively? I mentioned him earlier, Rodas Johnson. Not talking about him enough. This is a guy that's going to be in the rotation in the middle, right? He's a guy that's got plenty of playing experience in the Big Ten. He's got reps, man. He's an experienced guy, unlike some of the other guys. DJ, obviously young guy, super talented. Everybody's excited to see him in there. But, he hadn't had those same reps. Rodas Johnson's a grown man. And so I'm expecting that guy to be a big-time contributor in this team. And we're not talking about it enough. Chappelle, I talked about it earlier. Chappelle, I think he's going to have a big year. But the other guy that I expect to fully take hold of one of those corners is Javon Thomas. I've said it several times during this offseason. Everybody looks at what he did last year and the fact that, there was some, he got beat a couple of times as a freshman and all this stuff. He was a freshman thrown out into the fire by a bad coaching staff that wasn't preparing him to play in the first place. So, but he showed talent. He showed the ability to cover. And now he's got to perfect his technique. He's got to get better in that area. But Javon Thomas, I expect to take one of those corner spots. All right, question number 2 from the tailgate. What game do we know? What game is it that we will know what this team is, right? Where in the schedule will we have a good idea of where this team is? The reality of this team is, right? Some would say Notre Dame, right? Hey, look, right off the bat, it's a huge, huge game for sure, a huge challenge for sure. But it's week 1, right? This team is still going to have a lot of growth from there. There's so much. You won't even have really have your rotations by then. You're not going to have everybody established as where you want to play them. That's going to be the first chance for real action. Notre Dame is not it. I think it's week 3 at Florida. And let me tell you why. One, this whole road thing, right? Road losses, like how many in a row, whatever, right? This is our first game on the road where those guys are going to have to go out and go go tune out the crowd and see all that stuff and figure out how can they still play fast and play big, right? And to me, Florida's getting some hype, but they're not top 25, right? So this is a team that you probably are expected to beat. Probably expected to beat. If they were to measure talent there versus talent here, you're probably expected to beat. Now we're on the road, so they get a little bump there. But overall, you're the more talented team. They have enough talent to beat you, though. They will also have 2 games under their belt to work through the different issues and the problems and the rotations and the depth chart and everything else. We will have 2 games under our belt to have worked through that. Those things are going to be cleaner. We'll have a much better idea. But here's the other thing. Napier's seat is already hot. So the intensity of this game should be through the freaking roof, right? They got a game 1 against Miami, I think, right? And so they're going to have a big time game and, under their belt as well. They're going to be looking for a home win with over a, potentially top 25 team to try to make a statement. This is one of those games that's sort of that hump in the road, right? Because if you can get a win here, you've got the opportunity to go and start really, no matter what happens with Notre Dame, start really establishing some things. This could be a momentum game, right? Get you going on the road against a team that's talented, that's got a history, a rich tradition. And to me, if you beat them, you've got an opportunity to probably win all of your road games, right? Who on the road is better than Florida? South Carolina? Probably not. Mississippi State? Probably not. Auburn? Probably not. So all of a sudden you've got that opportunity, and now you're talking. If you can beat them handily, boy, you should be excited about this team. You should get excited about this team. Florida, week 3 against Florida, that's the team. That's when you'll know. That's when you know, because if you lose to Florida, we got a long ways to go. We're not there yet. That doesn't mean you can't get better, but this is a team that's got a lot of work to do still. All right, guys. That's it for me today. I think now as practice begins, we're going to start trying to get out here every week. Gig 'em Aggies, AP, signing out from the tailgate.